Hey everybody, long time no see. We got to catch up. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Mild Rumpus, coming at you live from the House of Flimsy, my dilapidated one-bedroom apartment that is filled with books and noise. Today, we're going to be talking about all the books that I read during the month of May. Yeah, May. Okay, first things first, thanks to everyone who dropped me a quick little note and said, hey, how you doing? You around? You still alive? What's going on? Everything is good. I took a 2-week vacation because I needed to. There was a lot going on outside the booktube world. Things are good, nothing to worry about. I'm not going anywhere. But that also means that we have a lot to catch up on because, as you know, a lot can happen in 2 weeks. Not only am I a book nerd, but I'm also a theater nerd. So I took some time to see some shows that I wanted to see this season. The first one was The Life and Slimes of Mark Summers over at New World Stages. Mark Summers, of course, is the host of Double Dare, and he also has some shows on Food Network, but it was a childhood dream to sit in that theater, and they basically recreated the set of Double Dare and used Double Dare as a metaphor for his life, you know, the physical challenges and whatnot. It was really great. I learned a lot about Mark Summers that I didn't know. The dude has been through it, and it was great. I really enjoyed that one. This was like top of my list of things to see this season, and that was Appropriate, starring Sarah Paulson. She was amazing. The play was great. I plan on reading the script and other plays written by this playwright because it was the first, I think, of his work that I had seen and loved it. It was very provocative, very, very, very good. And then on Monday, I celebrated my birthday, and where else better to celebrate your birthday than down at the Kit Kat Club at the August Wilson Theater. I saw the immersive production of Cabaret starring Eddie Redmayne and Bebe Neuwirth. And let me just say, this is Bebe's show. I know the Tonys are next week, and I'm assuming that she's nominated because she was fantastic. But that's what I saw theater-wise. And now let's jump into the books. So let's both try to dig back into our memory banks and remember what happened during the month of May. I know that my theme for the month was maybe this time, maybe mayhem, because there were some books that I wanted to read that I wasn't able to read in previous months, but I still wanted to get to. This is one of them. And the main focus of the month was reading as much horror as possible for the Horror Mayhem reading event, which had prompts like classic horror, local horror, movie horror, and contemporary horror. So I read a lot of horror books. This is the only one that was not horror related, and that's Martyr. And for me, it was just okay. I think that I bought way too much into the hype. This book was supposed to be like one of the books of the year, nominated for everything, you know, and I liked it, didn't love it. This book is about an aspiring artist. His mother passed away in a tragic event where a plane was shot down by the US military. He never knew her, and he's trying to piece together his own history while trying to kind of make his own stamp on the world and with his art. There were parts of this story that I really did enjoy, especially the conversations between him and another character in the book where it's sort of like a Marina Abramovic type character where this woman who is an artist is passing away, and kind of as her last performance art piece, she's sitting in the museum answering questions and having conversations while she's in the process of dying. And that to me was the strongest parts of the book. There were other pieces where he has conversations with imaginary figures, including like Lisa Simpson, similarly done in the book James and done better in the book James. When that happened throughout this book, it kind of took me out of the story. It just kind of fell victim, I think, to the fact that it wasn't what I expected and it just didn't live up to the hype. Not to say it's a bad book, it's a good book. I wouldn't say don't read this book. It was just all right. This next book was not featured on my TBR, but it was one of the first books I read during the month of May because I reviewed it for Literary Gladiators. They invited me to take part in this reading event called the Alphabet round table where you are assigned a letter and you have to read a book that begins with that letter and review it. And I chose my best friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This was one of my favorite books of the month, and you can see that review down below. I'll put the link. Definitely go and watch it. I had a lot of fun doing that, and it was really the first kind of collab that I did with another channel. So I had a lot of fun doing that, and don't be afraid to hit me up. I like that. I like doing that type of thing. For classic horror, I read the original Frankenstein. This is a really cool edition of Frankenstein. It features the original manuscript by Mary Shelley and then the revised manuscript with portions that were added by Percy Shelley, her husband and the famous poet. I only read the original manuscript. I do plan to go back and read the revised manuscript, but I was really just shocked at how readable it is and how contemporary it feels. And it is nothing like the classic movie. If you have seen that film, forget about it. This book was fantastic. I loved how the second half of the book is told from the perspective of the monster, and you really feel for the Frankenstein's creature, you know, and you just wind up hating Frankenstein. For local horror, I read Nestlings by Nat Cassidy, and this was another favorite of the month. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one, and it was perfect for local horror for New York. It's about a couple who wins the housing lottery, and they get in this fancy schmancy building. They feel kind of like imposters at first, and then the wife notices some strange things going on in the apartment, and I don't want to give it away. But it's excellent. The next prompt was movie horror. So you're supposed to read a book that has been adapted into a movie, and I had no idea that the movie was adapted from a novel, but it was, and it's a very scary and creepy movie, one of my favorites, and that is Audition. I always have to watch the end of the movie like this because it's everything that scares and terrifies me. But the book is really more of a novella than a fully developed novel, and for that reason I would say that the movie is better than the book. It's one of those rare cases where the movie is actually better than the book. This is a story about a guy who is a widower. He has been a widower for quite some time, and so his son encourages him to get back into the dating pool, find a companion, and his friend decides, hey, let's hold this audition for this movie that we'll say we're producing, and maybe we'll find someone for you. And so they do, and he falls for this ballerina, a dancer, and let's just say that she's got some skeletons in her closet. For contemporary horror, I went with sort of a modern take on the Frankenstein story, and that was Monstrilio. And out of all of the books I read this month, I would say this was probably the strongest. It's about a woman whose son passes away, and she's told this folklore where if you take a piece of the body of the corpse and feed it and nurture it, it will grow into a new person. And so she saves a piece of the lung from her son and feeds it, and sure as the world, this little Monstrilio starts growing and developing, and I thought it was fantastic. It's divided into 4 or 5 different parts where each part of the story is told from the perspective of a character that's in the book, and it was great. It was fantastic. I'm really glad that I read this one. And that's all the books that I had on my TBR for the month of May. But because it was horror and they read so quickly, I was able to get through them really fast, and I was able to sneak 2 more books in. So the first one that I snuck in, because it was super short, was Ladies' Night by Jack Ketchum. Now, Jack Ketchum is an author who works in extreme horror. These are not your typical horror books. They're very gory, very shocking, very extreme, hence extreme horror. For me, this book suffered because of that. There really wasn't much of a story, which is funny considering in the introduction, he talked about how this was the longest book he had ever written. At one point, it was over 400 pages. There were multiple stories going on simultaneously, and apparently he just cut all of that out and just left all the gore. There was very little story here. Basically, there's a chemical leak, and it causes the women of New York City to be extremely violent. And so it's just literally like scene after scene after scene of women attacking men. and the men trying to defend themselves and take them out, which I wouldn't recommend this one. I gave it 3 stars, but it's really closer to a 2. Now, this book I didn't care for because there wasn't enough story and there was too much gore. And for the opposite reason, this was my least favorite book. I did not enjoy My Heart is a Chainsaw. This one had way too much story. It was way too long. It could have used some editing. And it really wasn't scary or gory or anything. I, quite frankly, was bored for the majority of this book. And I disliked it for the same reason I did not like If We Were Villains. Because in If We Were Villains, almost every other sentence there is a Shakespearean reference or a quote, and it drove me up the freaking wall. And with this one, he is constantly referencing slasher movies, which I get, it's part of the character, but after a while, it's like, really? And I love slasher movies. I got the references. I knew a lot of it. I learned a couple of things, but dear Lord, this just, it went on forever. So this was my least favorite book of the month. I gave it 2 stars, which is really saying something because this one should be the 2-star book, but it wound up being My Heart is a Chainsaw. I know that there are, I think, 2 more books in the series. They're all kind of, I think, books that aren't necessarily connected but take place in the same environment. I don't know if I'm going to get to those because this one, again, it was kind of a drag for me. That's it. That's what I read during the month of May. Let me know what you read and look for my video coming very, very soon about all of the books that I'm reading this month, the month of June. Until next time, bye. Happy reading. See you soon.